Our schools are only as strong as the board that governs them. Every major decision that touches students, teachers, and families runs through the school board. Vision answers the question, where are we trying to go? Now, I know when we think about educating kids, we don't usually think of it as a business. But what we don't talk about enough is who sits above the board? The people. Hey y'all, welcome to my YouTube channel where we learn together, take action together, and reflect together. My name is Tamira, and thank you so much for being here. Today we're talking about the 5 powerful lessons that I have learned from watching 3 years of school board meetings. And let me tell you, it has been a master class in business, in leadership, in education, in civic responsibility, all rolled into one. I learned so much about how our public school system actually works and at times how it doesn't work. These lessons opened my eyes to the power of civic engagement, to the complexity of running a large urban school district, and to the fact that the decisions made by our school board don't just impact students in classrooms, they impact entire neighborhoods, entire communities, and the future of our city. And I would argue that the school board might just be the most important elected body when it comes to shaping our local communities. And as I walk you through my 5 biggest takeaways from this 3-year journey, you'll understand more why I would make that argument. So if you're ready to hear what Memphis-Shelby County Schools and the school board have taught me over the last 36 months, then hop in the car and let's ride. Lesson number 1, schools reflect the board, understanding who holds the power. Our communities thrive when our children are well educated. The strength of our neighborhoods, the health of our economy, and even the safety of our streets all depend on how well we prepare the next generation. So when we talk about the quality of education, how well our schools meet students' academic, social, and emotional needs, we have to talk about the local school board, because what I've come to understand is this: our schools are only as strong as the board that governs them. Every major decision that touches students, teachers, and families runs through the school board. And while the superintendent handles the day-to-day operations of the district, the board is responsible for steering the ship. They will approve the district's budget, they make decisions on large contracts and capital investments, they hire, evaluate, and manage the superintendent, they approve the district strategic plan, they vote on whether to open new schools or close existing ones, they adopt the curriculum and the instructional materials that are used in the classrooms, they make decisions about school maintenance and infrastructure. And these aren't small routine tasks. These are decisions that shape the entire culture, priorities, and direction of the district. And once I understood that, I realized something important. If we care about student outcomes, our teacher support, and school safety or educational equity, then we have to care deeply about who sits in the board auditorium. We have to pay attention to who's running for school board and what they stand for, what they believe matters, what they value matters. Their track record and experience in the community matter. When we elect someone to serve on the board, we are choosing who will shape the education system that impacts our children and our city's future. And that's why I say our schools reflect the board that governs them. So when it comes time to cast that vote, we must do so with clarity, intention, and understanding of just how much power we're putting into someone's hands. Lesson number 2, without a strategic plan, there's no progress. Schools need vision, strategy, and goals. If we don't know where we're going, we can't lead our children there. That's why setting a clear vision, adopting a strategic plan, and identifying measurable goals are essential to ensuring that our children receive a high quality education academically, socially, and emotionally. Some of the most powerful insights I gained came during the superintendent search when Tamika Hart advised the board, emphasizing the importance of shared vision and measurable goals. Later, when I did a deep dive into the 5 components used to evaluate a superintendent, which you should check out if you have not already, it all made more sense. Let me break it down. Vision answers the question, where are we trying to go? What does it look, sound, and feel like for every child in our district to be well educated and supported? Strategic planning is the map. It's how the board and district align their work to move toward that vision with purpose, coordination, and direction. Goal setting defines the mile markers. What do we want to achieve in 1 year, in 3 years, in even 5 or 10 years? And just as importantly, how will we know if we're making progress? That's where progress monitoring comes in, tracking data, revisiting goals, and making adjustments as needed. This process of setting a clear vision, adopting a strategic plan, identifying measurable goals, and progress monitoring takes skill, critical thinking, deep knowledge of education, and a strong sense of identity and responsibility for our students' futures. Without this level of clarity, planning, and accountability, our children's needs will not be met. Vision without a plan is just a hope and a dream, and our kids deserve more than hopes and dreams. Lesson number 3, the school district is a business and managing it is incredibly complex. In the last lesson, I talked about the importance of having a clear vision, developing a strategic plan, setting goals, and monitoring progress. But here's something else I learned. The school district is a business and managing it is incredibly complex. Now, I know when we think about educating kids, we don't usually think of it as a business. But in reality, it is. It's a service-based public institution that employs thousands of people, serves over 100,000 students, and manages one of the largest operating budgets in the entire Memphis-Shelby County area. Now, the school district might not be a revenue-generating business, but it is a business indeed. Let me put that into perspective. The Memphis-Shelby County Schools budget is $1.85 billion. That's billion with a capital B. Now, let's scale that down. Imagine someone handed you a $100,000 check and said you need to manage every single cent down to zero for your household or small business. It has to reflect your goals, your values, your needs, and nothing can be wasted. What would you do? Would you create a detailed spreadsheet? Would you break it down by categories like rent, food, health, transportation? Would you track every dollar and compare it to your original plan? Now imagine doing that across 150 plus schools for thousands of employees with legal requirements, public accountability, and student outcomes at stake. That's what managing a district budget is like. Budget is policy. Where we spend money shows what we truly value. Every funding decision is a reflection of what and who matters. That's why managing this kind of budget requires a strong strategic plan, internal systems for monitoring, external audits, and transparency, and most importantly, competent, experienced leadership. Watching these meetings made it clear that the district must use every resource wisely and intentionally to deliver on the promise of education for every child in our city. And the complexity doesn't stop there. The district is one of the largest employers in the region. It includes departments like human resources, finances, IT, transportation, nutrition services, communications, operations, legal, and facilities. Each of these departments has its own leadership structure, workflows, compliance regulations, and performance expectations, just like you would find in a Fortune 500 company. Then there's infrastructure. The district manages over 226 buildings and properties, and this includes about 150 school campuses. services. That means overseeing utilities, maintenance, repairs, safety protocols, aging infrastructure. And that's not just education, that's real estate management, capital investment planning, and risk management all wrapped into one. And let's not forget the people it serves. The district has customers, students, and families with incredibly diverse needs. Some students need special education services, others need language support, access to mental health care, transportation, meals, or after-school programs. The district must be able to meet all of these needs with equity and care. And on top of all that, the district must comply with an enormous web of local, state, and federal laws. That includes everything from education policy to labor laws, civil rights protections, IDEA, which is Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, FERPA, which is Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, Title I funding requirements, and more. It has to manage regular audits, submit compliance reports, and adjust quickly when legislation changes. And unlike most businesses, every move the district makes is public. Board meetings are live streamed. Decisions are debated on social media. Leaders are elected or appointed, and their actions are constantly under public scrutiny. That means district leadership operates in a high-stakes, highly visible environment all the time. So yes, the school district is a business, a non-revenue generating business, but a business nonetheless. And it is a complex one. And understanding this made me appreciate not only the magnitude of what it takes to run a system of this size, but also the critical role we play as citizens, advocates, and community members in supporting and holding that system accountable. Lesson number 4, running a $1.8 billion school system is a job for a superintendent that acts as the CEO of a complex enterprise. Considering the last 2 lessons, the importance of vision, strategic planning, goal setting, and progress monitoring, and the reality that the school district is essentially a large, complex business, I came to fully understand the significance of the superintendent's role. We often hear superintendent and think of someone with a background in education, someone who maybe taught in a classroom or worked their way up through the school system. And while that's valuable, it's only part of the picture. What I've learned from watching school board meetings over the last 3 years is that the superintendent is not just an instructional leader. The superintendent is the CEO, the chief executive officer of the entire school district. This person is responsible for managing a $1.8 billion operation that employs thousands of people, operates over 200 building properties, and serves more than 100,000 students with diverse needs. It is their job to execute the vision, implement the strategic plan, and make sure the district stays aligned to its goals. And it's their job to ensure that every part of the organization, finance, human resources, transportation, nutrition, IT, operations, facilities, compliance, is running efficiently and effectively. That kind of responsibility requires the ability to build and lead a strong executive team, to develop systems and processes, to make high-stakes decisions, to communicate clearly and consistently, and to be held accountable for results. That's what makes the superintendent's relationship with the board so important. The board doesn't run the day-to-day operations. That's the superintendent's job. But the school board is responsible for hiring, evaluating, supporting, and holding the superintendent accountable. And that brings me to another important realization. When we think about what's qualifies someone to be a superintendent, we often debate whether they should come from education or business. But honestly, what we need is someone who can do both, someone who deeply understands what it takes to improve student outcomes and what it takes to run a multi-billion-dollar organization. Someone who can set a clear vision, build a strong culture, hire the right people, manage resources wisely, and establish the kinds of systems that lead to real results. The superintendent's role is about leading a system, and in that sense, the superintendent must be more than passionate about education. They must be experienced, strategic, and capable of leading with excellence. Lesson number 5, the power of the people and our civic responsibility. When we think about the organizational structure of local school districts, most structures have the superintendent at the top. Under the superintendent is a cabinet of leaders, the chief academic officer, chief financial officer, chief operations officer, and others who manage critical departments. And sometimes above the superintendent is the school board, the elected commissioners responsible for hiring, evaluating, and holding the superintendent accountable. But what we don't talk about enough is who sits above the board: the people, the citizens, the registered voters, us. We are the ones who elect those board members. We decide who holds each seat. And that means while the board may manage the superintendent, they are accountable to us, the people. And some might argue that the people have the most important power of all when it's exercised well. Over the past few years, we've seen major decisions unfold, some of them controversial and deeply consequential. The resignation of Superintendent or former Superintendent Joris Ray, the appointment of former interim Superintendent Tony Williams, a long, turbulent 18-month superintendent search, the hiring of former Superintendent Dr. Marie Fagans, and her termination less than a year later, the appointment of interim Superintendent Dr. Roderick Richmond, even conversations about a potential state takeover. It has been a lot. And through it all, I've watched how community engagement ebbed and flowed. I saw the impact of public comment, organized pushback, letters to the board, media coverage, and grassroots conversations. I saw how a single voice or a collective voice could influence the direction of the board. We as citizens carry just as much responsibility as the board. We must stay informed, we must stay engaged, and we must understand the systems that govern our schools so that we can hold those in power accountable. Because the decisions made in the board auditorium affect our students, our teachers, our neighborhoods, and our city's future. Now, I'm going to be real. Staying engaged isn't easy. Memphis-Shelby County Schools is, as I said, an incredibly complex organization. I've made a commitment to stay as engaged as possible for the past 3 years, and even with the time and flexibility that I've had, it's been a challenge. Those meetings are long, often up to 5 hours. The language can be technical, and if you don't have a background in education or governance, it can feel intimidating or overwhelming to follow. And that's why it's so important for us to determine the best way to engage as individuals and as a collective. Civic engagement doesn't have to look the same for everyone. Some people have time, others have resources, others have relationships, knowledge, or skills. Every form of engagement matters. Maybe it's attending the board meetings. Maybe it's reading summaries from advocacy organizations. Maybe it's having conversations with your neighbors or meeting with your commissioner or sending them an email. And of course, it's voting. One of the most powerful ways to engage is to vote for school board members who are aligned with your values and hold them accountable, whether you voted for them or not. You will always hear me say, get informed, get active, get engaged, and get reflective. And if you don't know how or where to start, reach out to me. I will do my best to point you in the right direction based on your capacity and your interests, because even a little engagement is better than none. Again, if you have time, use your time. If you have resources, use your resources. If you have influence, use your voice. We all have a role to play. And that's all I got for now, y'all. Thank you so much for riding with me. Remember to keep learning, keep taking action, and keep reflecting. I love y'all. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time. Bye.